Let's give it up for our dynamic team, Toastmasters guest and fellow Toastmasters. You've heard all the good news that's happening in our district. And guess what? We still have time. So after this conference, you're going to hear more incentives, more that's rolling out, because we're going all the way to June 30th, and District 47 will be on the map. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, it is now time to move into our first event of the conference, or keynote address. Deepak Menon of New Delhi, India, is a chartered accountant. He oversees management and operations and specializes in international taxation, cross-border taxation, transfer pricing, and direct taxes. He's been a Toastmaster since 2002 and presently is a member of Central Delphi Toastmasters and JPKU Toastmasters. He has held a number of high-profile leadership positions within Toastmasters. During his term as District 82 governor in 2009-2010, the district chartered, listen to this, an unbeaten record of 75 new clubs and attained the #1 position in the world as a President Distinguished District. Mr. Menon served as Region 13 advisor in 2011-2012 and as International Director from 2013 to 2015. He was elected as second Vice President in August 2016 and went on to lead Toastmasters International as its International President in 2019 to 2020. Mr. Menon served as the Chief Coordinator for the Toastmasters Youth Leadership Program in collaboration with the American Center in New Delphi and helped build communication and leadership skills for approximately 700 underprivileged children in 6 cities in India. This is super fun. He's quoted as saying, "Toastmasters has taught me skills that no school, no college, university can teach. It has helped me evolve from being a lone player to being a team player, from being led to being a leader, from the problem to being the solution." Please help me welcome our keynote speaker, distinguished Toastmaster, Deepak Menon.
Thank you, Madam District Director. It is such an honor to be present with all of you here in District 47. I wish I could have been there with all of you in Bahamas, Florida, or wherever you are, but I'm here in New Delhi, India. It's very early in the morning, but I'm up bright and early to be speaking with all of you. I remember the time that I came to Toastmasters the first time. Do you all remember that time? The first day that you attended Toastmasters? You do? Excellent. Well, let me tell you, I had to be literally pushed through the door because I didn't want to join Toastmasters. The gentleman who told me about Toastmasters had told me that this club would help me enhance my communication skills. And when he told me that, I thought to myself, communication skills, enhance them? I'm already a great speaker. I can speak to anybody. I can speak about anything. I can't improve my communication skills any more than I already have. So I wasn't truly interested in getting in through to that door of a Toastmasters club. But you know what? This gentleman, Mr. Bajaj, he kept following up. He kept pursuing. He used to phone me before every meeting. He would send me the agenda before every meeting. And finally, after 2 months of his constantly prodding me, I decided it was time for me to go to that meeting, attend it, and then tell him I'm not interested. So there I was at the Toastmasters meeting, and I was impressed by what I saw. but not so impressed that I wanted to join the club. The meeting progressed, the speakers were great, they were very professional. When it came time for table topics, some of you are kind of going ahead of what I'm going to say here. Yes, I was called upon to speak on table topics. And I'd seen the others speaking and I thought, it's easy. I can do it. What's the problem? But when my name was announced and I had to walk up to the stage, I remember that my legs started trembling. My heart started fluttering. It was beating very, very rapidly. I'd never experienced that kind of feeling before. Maybe once when I thought I was in love. But here I was walking up the stage, a sheen of perspiration on my forehead. And when the table topics master gave me the topic to speak on, I remember that my tongue seemed to be tied into ropes. Not a word seemed to be coming out of my mouth. I somehow managed to open my mouth. I muttered and mumbled something. And the moment I saw the 1 minute mark up, I ran back to my seat and heaved a sigh of relief. The torture was over. And I realized that I had a fear of speaking before an audience that perhaps Toastmasters would be able to cure. Before the end of that meeting, I had signed up as a Toastmaster. My friends, my learning started from that moment onwards. My learning as a Toastmaster, not just about communication skills and leadership skills. It's about a journey of transformation, about what you can discover. The pearls that lie in the deepest of the Toastmasters ocean are there available for us to unearth. All we need to do is to dive in. The more we embrace the program, the more we discover these pearls that help us in this journey of transformation. So what did I discover that day, that first day at Toastmasters? I discovered the importance of perseverance. If Mr. Bajaj had not persevered with me, had not kept calling up every single week, I wouldn't have come to Toastmasters at all. And perhaps I wouldn't have been speaking here before you today. So indeed, the power of perseverance is something that really held me in good stead in every step of the way as a leader, as a Toastmaster. Never give up. Always remember there is always the next step to take. So perseverance, a very important attribute that I learned in Toastmasters. I learned also it's so important to say yes to opportunities. When the window of opportunities open, they lead you out to a magnificent world that you've never experienced before. But you've got to say yes to it. If the opportunity comes knocking and you say, no, I'm not interested to everything that comes to you, you'll never be able to experience what is on the other side of that door, the other side of that window. So say yes to opportunities every time. Yes, it's possible that that opportunity that you get may perhaps not be the best, may not be the one for you, but how will you know unless you've experienced it? So say yes every time, as I did that day in Toastmasters. I said yes to that opportunity, and here I am. I kept learning every single day in Toastmasters. Every meeting was a learning experience for me. What do you think? Are meetings learning experiences for all of you? Whether you've been Toastmasters for a day, 6 months, a year, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, somebody in the house who's been a member for 30 years, show me your hands up. If you've been a member for 30 years. Oh, wow. Let's give it up for Henry. Congratulations, Henry. I've been a Toastmaster only for 20 years so far. I'm hoping to get to 30 and more. But indeed, I've met some who've been in Toastmasters for more than half a century. Imagine, I met a member who was evaluated by Dr. Smedley. And that was amazing to be in contact with such a gentleman. Or we've got somebody else who's been more than 30 years, Aletta Richmond. Well, give it up for Aletta too, 30 years. Wow, amazing. So every day is a learning experience, and every meeting we attend gives us a few more nuggets that we can learn from, that we can use to transform ourselves from who we are to what we can become and what we ultimately become. But today I'm talking about what is it that you can discover on the way. Now, this club that I joined, the Toastmasters Club of New Delhi in July 2002, was the only club in the city of New Delhi at that time. It was, in fact, one of 6 clubs in India. Now, some of you who've seen the geography of India know it's a fairly large country, and only 6 clubs. I'm sure you wonder, 6 clubs, how did they communicate with each other? Well, we didn't communicate with each other. We didn't even know about the existence of each other. We were not part of an area. We were not part of a division. We were not part of a district. We were undistricted clubs. I'm sure that some of you find that word very strange. Undistricted? What is undistricted? Well, undistricted is a club who nobody cares about, who's there just hanging in the middle, doing their own thing. And that's what we were doing. We were doing our own thing. We did what we felt was right. And we were learning every single day. Now, I happen to be in the capital city of India, New Delhi. And in New Delhi, we get a lot of visitors from all over the world. Of course, because it's the capital. And that is the place that we end up receiving a lot of Toastmasters, visiting Toastmasters. Every time a visiting Toastmaster came, the first thing they did was to check out if there was a Toastmasters club in the city. And they would latch on to the Toastmasters Club of New Delhi. They would call up, and if it were a Tuesday, they would be there at the meeting. I remember that one day when we had distinguished Toastmaster Sid Chopra visiting us from California. We'd never heard of a distinguished Toastmaster before. And it was the first time that we knew there was a distinguished Toastmaster title. So we were wondering, who would be this distinguished Toastmaster? He must be really somebody high and mighty. And we were looking forward to seeing him, visiting with him. When he came to the club, we were pleasantly surprised to find this very humble person who seemed to be so willing to help, so willing to support. And he sat through the entire meeting. Now that day, I was evaluating an icebreaker speech. I was very excited because I knew we would put up a wonderful meeting for Sid, and Sid at the end of the meeting would exclaim, "Wow, what a wonderful meeting. The best I've ever attended in the world." The icebreaker speaker, lady called Ranjita, she had a fine speech. She spoke for about 4 minutes. And then when it was time for me to evaluate, I talked about all the good things that she did. I talked about all the things that she could do to improve. And finally, when I closed talking about the best things that I liked about her speech, it was 6 minutes. Yes, I spoke for 6 minutes in my evaluation for Ranjita. But that's what we did in our club, you see. We used to speak for as much as we wanted. The timer would stop the clock when it was time for evaluations, because of course, evaluations were the meat. That was where everybody got the benefit of Toastmasters, right? At the end of the meeting, when we called upon Sid, to tell us what we could do to improve. Of course, we knew he would have nothing to tell us to improve. You told us, I'm sure he would have told us that the meeting was the best possible. But when he opened his mouth, he said, and you would guess it right. He said, yes, this was the best meeting I attended. Wonderful meeting. You all did very well. I'm carrying back with me to California some of the things that you've done, which we might want to implement. But I do have one piece of advice, which is that when you're evaluating, try to speak a little less than the speaker herself. In fact, try to speak only for 2 to 3 minutes. When we looked at each other, what do you mean? Only 2 to 3 minutes for evaluation? How can we limit ourselves to 2 to 3 minutes? And then, of course, Sid went on to tell us, yes, 2 to 3 minutes. That's what Toastmasters wants you to do. You have all the time in the world to speak to the speaker later and give them additional feedback if you want. But when you're at the club meeting, value time and ensure that you limit yourself to 2 to 3 minutes. And that was fabulous learning. And from the very next meeting, we started implementing the 2 to 3 minute evaluation rule. My friends, we learned the importance of feedback. We learned the importance of listening to everybody, active listening, willingness to implement what we learned. And that's the way we kept growing. That's how we evolved, we transformed. It is extremely important that we know how to take feedback. We learned that in Toastmasters through the supportive feedback that we receive every single meeting. And it's important to take that well, to understand as a person giving feedback, as a person receiving feedback, how that feedback influences us and matters to us. So you need to make that feedback matter. You need to make that feedback such that it's easy for the person receiving the feedback to be able to implement it, to value it. We build self-esteem of our speakers, of our role players, of everybody in Toastmasters through the feedback that we provide. And I learned that skill. I learned about feedback, such an important, valuable skill. I remember in another meeting, there was this young lady who was being given feedback, being evaluated. She had completed the 9th project from the traditional competent communicator program. Some of you who are that old in Toastmasters might remember the 9th project was Persuade with Power. It still is a project available to you in level 3 of pathways, of any of the paths, in fact, that you choose. And that lady happened to be a dentist, and she was speaking about why it was important to visit a dentist every 6 months. Yeah, she tried to persuade us to go to her every 6 months. She was building her own marketing skills. At the end of her speech, when it was time for the evaluator had a laundry list of recommendations. It almost seemed as if everything that the speaker had done was wrong. He only started by saying, that was a great speech. And then he had a dozen items of recommendation, things that the speaker did not do well, the things that the speaker could improve or should not have done. And then he just ended his evaluation by saying, I'd like to listen to you once again, or I'd like to hear you again. But you should have seen that member. She was in tears. And later, she called me and said that she didn't want to continue with Toastmasters, because that was not the reason she joined Toastmasters, to receive that cruel feedback. Sometimes we ourselves become very overzealous, giving the feedback, not understanding the emotions, the feelings of the people we are talking to, that we're giving feedback to. And it's so important that we build that emotional intelligence in ourselves. Make sure that we do not hurt anybody through the words that we speak, sometimes carelessly, sometimes casually, and sometimes most certainly deliberately. So be very careful. And I learned how important it was to choose my words, to be able to speak, to build self-esteem, to make sure that everybody feels supported in this environment, which is meant to keep people safe. You, I'm sure, in your meetings, keep everybody safe, because it's so important that we give them the freedom to express, to articulate all their feelings, sentiments, and thoughts, whatever may be the situation. So my friends, I kept learning. Now, by the way, this young lady, you would want to know what happened to her. Did she continue with Toastmasters? Yes, she did. She went to another club, delivered the same speech, and got wonderful feedback. She was told that was a wonderful speech that she delivered. The only thing that she was told to improve was the title of her speech. That was it. And not only did she continue with Toastmasters, she ended up becoming the district director of the district. So imagine the power of feedback. It can destroy you, or it can really build you up. What is it that you want to do? My journey in Toastmasters continued to reveal those hidden gems to me, all the while teaching me ways to be more creative. Toastmasters is a platform which allows you to be as creative as you want to be. And you can have the willingness to fail, because there are so many who are there available to you to lift you up. So I tried to be as creative as I could be. I remember I delivered a speech, and it was an icebreaker speech, probably the third or fourth time that I delivered it. And I thought it didn't make sense to me to be, again, talking about when I was born, what are my hobbies, how I live my life, what kind of profession I'm in, etc., etc., etc. So I decided I'd do it differently. After all, I had the ability to fail. And even if I failed and fell on my face, I would still have more opportunities. And so I decided that I would speak in third person. And the third person that I had the voice of was my pet dog, Elsa, my Labrador. So it was from Labrador's eyes that Deepak was being described. And I remember I had a lot of fun in that speech. The first time I'd attempted something like that, I had a few woofs there also in the speech. And my audience seemed to love it as well. And that experiment worked. So I learned how important it was not to be afraid, but to experiment. Use this platform in any way that you want, because after all, this is the place where even if you fail, you can succeed. It's not like the outside cruel world, the one that is beyond the doors of Toastmasters, where it's a dog-eat-dog world, where nobody will give you a second look if you fail. But in Toastmasters, everything is possible. We are all there to support each other. As my journey continued in Toastmasters, we became a district. Yes, we were District 82, all of the clubs in India and Sri Lanka together in 2006, 2007 were combined together to become a provisional district. And I was the first of 3 division governors. Now they be called division directors. At that time, we were called division governors of that brand new district. I had the privilege of leading the division, which constituted 3/4 of India. Yes, 3/4 of India. That was the size of my division. Incidentally, that division today is 2 districts. And on 1 July 2022, it'll convert into 5 districts. But in 2006, it was still 1 division. And I had absolutely no idea what I needed to do as the division governor. Because of course, I didn't have any experience of leading or being a part of a district prior to that. The district director, the program quality director, the club growth director, of course, they were all different titles at that time. None of them had any experience as well. And so we were all floundering around. And I discovered the value of mentors. Do you have mentors? You do have mentors, right? I have had multiple mentors and I continue to receive mentoring. But it was mentoring that year that helped me the most. A leadership mentor who came into my life, who helped me navigate this journey as the division governor that year. And it was quite by serendipity that I discovered this mentor. I was at a district conference at the time when I got elected as division governor, and that's when I noticed this gentleman, distinguished Toastmaster Patanayak, who seemed to know it all, who had all the answers. Anytime anybody put a question to him, he would immediately give you a response. And clearly he seemed to know so much. So after the conference, when I went back home, I called up and said, will you be able to guide my way? Will you be able to help me through my journey as the division governor, division director? And he said, yes, I will. Later, he told me, if you had not asked me, of course, I would not have helped you. And I learned it's so important to ask. Sometimes we feel afraid that we might, when we ask, receive a no. But we might also receive a yes. You don't lose anything by asking. When you ask for help and you receive it, well, that's the best thing that can happen. If you ask for help and you don't receive it, move on, find somebody else who can help you. So remember, it's so important to keep asking. And I learned that skill of asking. I would ask everybody to help me. And I learned that skill only in Toastmasters. Because before that, in my profession, I would never ask for help from anybody. I thought I could do everything by myself because nobody could do anything better than I did. But I realized that I could do everything in Toastmasters. When I was division governor, I needed the help of the area governors, the area directors. I needed the help of the club presidents. They were all part of my team and they had to do their job. I couldn't do their job for them. Even though I perhaps may have wanted to. Seriously, sometimes when I would be talking to some of the area directors, I would know more than what they knew about their areas. And I would have to give them some education about it. And I would feel frustrated. But I knew it was important to allow them the freedom to do what they had to do the way they wanted to do. My friends, the lessons I learned in Toastmasters have been enormous. They have given me enormous wealth. The wealth which cannot be counted in dollar terms, but it can be counted in terms of the nourishment of the soul. I have received the love and affection of members from around the world, as I'm sure you do, from your club, from people around. So there is so much that I have discovered and yet that remains discovering, which is why I keep going back to Toastmasters every single meeting. I urge you all to keep learning, to keep diving deep into this ocean of Toastmasters, because there are still those pearls which you've not uncovered yet. And that's when your journey of transformation will begin. Madam District Director,